Despite orchestrated hysteria about the dropout problem, what many apathetic students most need is a cold dose of reality that they can only get out in the workaday world, not in the never-never land of the public schools.
We were told to send our children off to public schools with the intention that they would receive a well-rounded quality education, learning their reading, writing, arithmetic, socialize and get friends, and because socialization is everything apparently. If you don't socialize, you're not cool anymore apparently. And we were told that by doing this, we would prepare children and raise them up in such a way that they would be ready for the real world. In today's video, I want to introduce some clips from Thomas Sowell, who is a wonderful, renowned speaker and an author, and he is an intellectual, and I want to get his opinion on it, where I'm going to comment on top of it. So without further ado, hi, my name is Nita, and welcome back to Youth Defender.
American education would be comic if it were not so tragic in its consequences. Recently, I received a letter from a school teacher asking for an autographed picture for his class because it would ultimately, ultimately, help his students to have me as a role model, ROLL. Atypical? Let us hope so. But a few years ago, a study showed the average verbal scholastic aptitude test score for aspiring teachers to be 389 out of a possible 800.
Wow, how tragic. 389 out of a possible 800 is the average score for American teachers. So here we have a bunch of people who are not very smart trying to teach our children how to be very smart. Can you see how that doesn't really work? Yeah, the math isn't mathing. Thomas Sowell is just introducing this statement, and I really love it because it puts things in perspective immediately. From the very beginning, you just already know this is going to be tragic. Like teachers supposedly teaching supposedly our students and educating them is just a very comical start. And so let's keep listening. I love Thomas Sowell's voice, and I also love his insight. And really, if you think about it, it's nothing that none of us don't already know, but sometimes it helps to kind of hear from a different perspective and from a different voice. So let's keep listening.
With American school children repeatedly finishing at or near the bottom on international test comparisons, the response of the education establishment has been to seek ever more non-academic adventures to go off on. Among the latest of these innovations, a magic word in the wonderland of educational newspeak, is called outcome-based education.
How tragic is that whenever we are competing internationally with other students, our children are scoring the very lowest, and that has actually been the case for quite some time, I would say, since they introduced Common Core. But I don't want to jump to conclusions, especially without statistics in front of me. But a few years ago, maybe about 12 years ago, I think they rolled that out mid-2000s, 2007, somewhere around there. And like I said, this is not something that's necessarily new to any of us. We're not dumbfounded at this point. At least we should not be. We should be saying, yeah, I know all this. This is all just repetition at this point. But it's still helpful to just sort of know what is going on with the system. Now, I would never put my children in public schools. Like, you couldn't pay me any amount of money to put my precious little ones into that system. Like, no way. I don't even think about it. My thought is, how can I get other people to see for what it really is before it's too late? Now, I'm not saying every single individual school is bad. I can never say that. But what I am saying is that what's being pushed on the school system is bad. I can say that categorically. And so, and how do you know that for sure? We'll just look at just that statistic alone, that we're ranking at the very, very bottom when competing with our international counterparts. And so that by itself is just puts things into perspective right away. So we know what we're not doing right. We know that they're not teaching academics, reading, writing, arithmetic, as I started out, but we're also going to learn about the things that are being taught in school, which is obviously out of place. Let's keep listening.
When concrete specifics leak out, there is often shock, as there currently is in California, where tests are intruding into students' family lives and sexual experiences, among other things. The parents who first protested were predictably labeled the religious right. But now, even some in the educational establishment itself have begun to express concern.
It just amazes me how whenever you don't agree with what these people are trying to push on the children, you're immediately labeled. I think that is just such a fascinating statement. It's just like, oh, you don't agree that we should be teaching your children foreign religions or engaging your children in foreign religious practices. They won't call it a religion. They'll just say It's a practice. Yoga is a practice. It's a breathing exercise. Yes, but where does it originate? And who are practicing these things? Where did it come from? And why do we have to learn it? And why is it so bad when I say that I don't want my children to learn? And why is this sparking a debate? It's just tragic what's happening to our children. I don't want to speak from a negative perspective exclusively, but I do want to definitely carry the weight of this matter seriously. I do not want to make light of it because it's not a light situation. It is unfortunate because children in this country are still trapped. A lot of you are exiting, and I'm so proud of you. Some of you are like, I'm out of here. Like, you guys are losers. I'm done. I'm finished. I'm through. I'll homeschool my children, put them in private school or charter school or something else, but you're not taking my child. Some of you are a little reluctant, and those are the people I'm speaking to. Those who are just on the, on the brink. They're like, well, I'm thinking about it, maybe, probably, and I like to just encourage you to know sort of what options you have. But before I give you any options, I just want you to know what's actually happening, just to start us out. Let's keep listening to Thomas Sowell as he explains. Not only are they teaching for religions in certain schools, and everyone knew California was pretty jacked up. Like, everybody already knew that. Like, not California necessarily, but the governor. Yeah. So I don't want to start naming names or pointing fingers, but everyone already knew that he was an interesting fellow. And so that part doesn't surprise us. But let's keep listening and see what happens next.
Not long before, parents in Connecticut who objected to film strips of naked couples engaged in sex, both homosexual and heterosexual, being shown in the local junior high school, were labeled fundamentalists and right-wing extremists, even though they were in fact affluent Episcopalians. There are all sorts of prepackaged responses to critics of the public schools, of which this was just one.
There are prepackaged responses to critics of the public schools. It's prepackaged. So if you ever decide to say, hey, I don't think I want my children, watching clips or scenes of two people having sexual relations, it's like, you're a bigot. I knew it. You're a bigot. Like, what else would you be? How could you not be a bigot or a child hater or so on and so forth if you are right-winged extremist? I think that's great. A right-wing extremist. No, we're not right-wing extremists or any of those things. We simply love our children. That's it, and we acknowledge that you hate our children. Now, again, these are some forceful words, but if I'm lying, then prove me wrong. Based on the data and based on what we've seen all around us, again, like I said, none of this is new. Hopefully this isn't catching anybody by surprise. Like, oh my goodness, they're doing what? They're trying to get kids to do, hopefully that's not the case. But it is still helpful to know what's going on and to kind of have it repeated. They say somewhere that, if you want someone to believe a lie, keep repeating it. Well, if you want someone to believe the truth, keep repeating it too. It's unfortunate that we have more lies out there than truth. And so that's the reason I do what I do, is just to give people an opportunity to hear all the sides of it. Like, you're going to hear their side, no doubt, because they own all the media and they own all these things. But, I don't need to have a media channel. I'm going to use whatever God has given me to proclaim the truth from the rooftops. And this is one method that the Lord has given me. So let's keep listening and find out.
Recently, I got a first-hand dose of these stereotyped responses when addressing a class of students who were being trained for careers as teachers. They seemed disconcerted by the questions I put to them. Suppose you are wrong. How would you know? How would you test for that possibility? The very thought that the dogmas they were repeating with such fervor might be open to question or subject to evidence seemed never to have occurred to them. This was a far more ominous sign than their merely being wrong on particular beliefs. How can they teach anybody else to think if they themselves have not reached this elementary level of logic? By thinking, too many educators today mean teaching children to reject traditions in favor of their own emotional responses. Objections to such propaganda programs are called objections to letting children think. Anything less than a blank check for indoctrination is called censorship. In light of such non-academic activities in our public schools, it can hardly be surprising that American youngsters do so badly on academic tests administered to youngsters around the world. Nor is it surprising that academic work is so readily abandoned for social experiments, ideological crusades, and psychological manipulations by educators whose own academic performances have long been shown to be substandard.
Ooh, ouch. Mr. Sowell, that was a tough one. Yeah, he said it. The academic level of the teacher is basically being impressed on the children. They cannot learn above what their teacher has taught. And actually, the Lord said this first in the scriptures. He says, the student is not above the teacher. Okay, it is sufficient if the student learns as much as the teacher. That is the highest you can learn, is the level of your teacher. Now imagine if you're not taught by someone who's not very smart. I don't want to use the word ignorant, but someone who's undereducated. Well then, and perhaps that's replaced with someone who's very well educated, or maybe your parents just love taking you to the library and letting, quality books educate your mind. Well then, now you have a higher teacher. So the academic level of your teacher is higher, so that the student has a chance to perform at a higher level. And that is the truth. If you want your students to perform, your children to perform, if you want them to not be at the bottom of the ranks whenever they're competing internationally, then you just want to get them better teachers. And a lot of times, unfortunately, this is going to start with outside of the public school system. Now, again, I'm not opposed to every teacher. I'm a teacher myself. I'm not opposed to every school, because there are some schools that are better than others. But there is a shadow that's being cast on the schools. That's a reflection of Hollywood. It's a reflection of the media. It's a reflection of the multi-billionaires with deep pockets who are dead set on disrupting the flow of humanity. For whatever reason, they're dead set on destroying God's creation in ways that are really perverted and weird and wicked. And you see it unfold all around us all the time. And I just want to, like I said before, bring these things to light. And it doesn't hurt to have these conversations. It doesn't hurt to have these conversations. It doesn't hurt. We don't want to be. We want to give ourselves an opportunity to discuss these things, no matter how uncomfortable they are, because only in that conversation can we truly be free. Jesus says, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." But what if we don't know the truth? What if we don't know the truth? And so that's the reason for this. Thanks so much for listening to me and Dr. Sowell, and just being a part of this conversation. Please carry the conversation forward, and I trust that the Lord will help you to do that. Again, if you want to read this post in total, please visit youthdefender.substack.com, where you can read the post there. But until next time, I'll see you. God bless. Bye-bye.